Okay, great. All right. First slide. Okay, thanks everybody. It's great that you're here. This is sort of a really interesting topic for me because I've been in digital marketing for the last 30 years. We all know that LLMs have disrupted businesses, but now there's this huge shift that's coming. And it's been years that we have been depending on Google to drive a lot of traffic. Right now, Google generally drives more than 50% of traffic to corporate websites, and that's already starting to change. But as LLMs are more widely used, many are believing that they can manipulate LLMs to return their content and their ideas. So our panel, which I'm delighted to introduce in a second, they're going to explore these assumptions, and they're going to come back with the impact and their belief on how these LLM content changes, on how this affects what we can do with LLMs to return our content. So I was very delighted that Alden and Julio jumped on board with me. Alden is the CEO of Custom GPT, which is a platform that enables businesses to create personalized AI chatbots with their own data. And Julio has been working in AI 20 plus years and specializing in using advanced technologies to solve complex issues. So we're going to start. I'm going to be showing you some questions, and they're going to answer. And we would also like our audience to step in and question and provide their input. So Gartner came out recently predicting that search engine traffic by 2026 is going to drop by 25%. That's a huge hit. I can tell you from many years, Google has provided the best leads. And with that at risk, now people are turning to other places to have their content returned. So here are some of the things that I hear in my business about what's possible. I'm not saying these are true. This is just what gets thrown around out there, that they can be optimized for higher visibility in their responses, that you can directly update their knowledge, that you can have frequent updates, and that will boost relevance in the LLMs, and that you can, in effect, SEO LLMs, as Julio says. So our first question to our panel is, can LLMs be influenced to reflect a personal view or content that for other people to see? So Alden, do you want to take a shot at this first?
Absolutely. So thanks for having me, Rosemary. And my feeling on this is absolutely yes. Similar to SEO, LLMs can be influenced if you start going into the data sources, right? So if you look at ChatGPT, a lot of its data sources are through a Bing search or through a common crawl. So if you are able to get yourself into the right common crawl or Bing search queries, you can start showing up in ChatGPT responses.
And
And
excuse me, Rosemary, Alden, I just want to confirm, we're talking about like B2C standard search engine. So this is Bing and Google, and the equivalent of large LLM word, it would be OpenAI and Gemini, not the search engine within Amazon or within a corporate website, correct?
that is correct.
Yeah.
That is correct. And the big X factor in this, at least in my eyes, is Bing. Because if ChatGPT ends up doing a number on Google, it'll be Bing that will be powering that.
And Julio, do you want to step in?
Sure. And it's interesting that Alden answered that way, because I was going to say the opposite. I think it depends on what you mean by influence and other people, and how exactly you mean this whole question. But I would have said no, because you can have very little control over the LLMs. They have both fixed knowledge from their training, and then if they have tools, they do searches on the internet. And there's very little control you can exert over the fixed knowledge. and then there might be a little bit more control over what happens with the tools once they search the internet, but it'd be very difficult to do. And in particular, I don't know if people mean by doing a bunch of different specific kinds of searches that the LLM will learn to respond in a different way, because they'll start seeing things. The LLMs, as they move more towards agents kind of technology, they will learn more about like your interests and what you prefer and facts about you, and they'll start using that to generate answers for you. But that's just for you. That's not for other people. So it kind of depends on what the question really means, what the
And Julio, that's very similar to personalization within Google, right? And so you're suggesting that the LLMs are going to go in that direction so that a person who's prompting and continuing to put their input in, they're going to, because we have memory now with ChatGPT, they're going to start to see a different result.
I believe so. Yes. I believe that'll happen because they'll have memory, like you said. Well, they have different kinds of system prompts that you can specify. You can say, oh, I like very academic answers, or I like very simplistic answers, or whatever. And so that'll affect what you see, but I don't believe it'll affect what other people see. To do that, you need to influence either the training data or the results, and then I don't know how much you're going to influence the training data, and then the results I think we'll talk about a little bit more. That's more traditional SEO and search engine results.
And if folks have questions, feel free to put up your hands. I know there's a couple chat questions. And Rosemary, I want to just clarify again, when we say influence, what I hear is I can pay money to influence. So John and I, one AI leader we're supporting is they sell college loans. 25% of their business comes from Google ads. It's critical. And the way I hear your question is, can I spend money to outmaneuver my competitor in an LLM-based model? Is that the same?
Well, no, we're not saying money is involved. We're simply saying, are there techniques that you can use so that an LLM will return your content, your links when someone creates a prompt? So if they were to say, what is the best, custom GPT? Obviously, Alden would want his to come up. Is it possible to influence the LLM to do such a thing? That's what we're trying to get at here with this question.
What are the best college loans for students in Boston would be another.
Exactly. And to influence something like this, like my number one top technique right now would be to go and make sure you're number one in Bing for that query.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
That would
I
make
agree with, yes.
We ignored Bing for decades now, right? But we've reached a point now where you can no longer ignore Bing, because if you ignore Bing, you'll pay the price in ChatGPT. That is the difference here with the college loan example.
A great observation, Alden. Go ahead, Lucinda. Go ahead. Thanks.
Yeah. So this is actually this is a little bit different than what Alden's talking about, which is how to actually influence it. But I was listening to that podcast called Hard Fork, and the two guys there, one is a guy who runs a newsletter called Platformer, and the other one is Kevin Roos, who's the guy who did that really long article on ChatGPT a year ago, where it said it was trying to break up his marriage, etc. Anyway, it's a really great podcast to listen to. The thing they were talking about was that for many businesses and for many content providers, that Google is basically going to disintermediate basically Google search, right? Because if you have a Gemini GPT summarizer, now you're essentially going into the walled garden of Google, that you have a summarizer, and that, yeah, there may be some links, but people may just go with the summary instead of going and looking at all the different links. And they felt that would be one of the major reasons for everything the number of SEO and traffic delivered to content providers. So the question for them is, how do we then get the traffic that we need to get new subscribers? So I wanted to bring up that point. And then for Alden, question, which is, how would you go influence how you're number one in Bing, or even how the summary will say that you're number one in ChatGPT? Is there a way to influence that?
Yeah. So yes, there is. And the honest answer on this is, we've been ignoring Bing, right? Everybody has been optimizing to Google, right? And how do we optimize to Google? We go do backlinking, we do monitor our results, we make sure we are number one for all the queries that are matter. And historically, we've just been sitting there saying Google, Google, Google. And now it's time to take a look and say, okay, great, I'm ranking number one in Google, but am I ranking number one in Bing? Because if you don't do the same things that you're doing for Google in Bing and making sure that you are number one, then you won't show up in ChatGPT.
But the issue is that you only, if you have a piece of content, you can only optimize it one way, right? And generally, if you're doing well in Google, you're also doing well in Bing. The trouble is that Bing gets such low traffic for B2B sites, right? Like it's a fraction of what Google drives. And Lucinda, we're going to show you some things that can be, I believe that can be done to increase the likelihood that you'll be returned in some of these LLM results.
Yeah, like the summary for Gemini, right? Because that's one of the key things is that, yeah, if your link isn't there, nobody's going to go to you. And how do you get subscribers? You just go to TikTok now. What are you going to do? I mean, yeah.
But Lucinda, isn't there a third, or well, let me ask it differently. Is there going to be instead of search engine optimization, it's going to be a Google SEE optimization? Because already Google now gives me both options. So I can search for regular Google for top loans in Boston, or I can search on Google and get SEE experience, or I can go to Bing.
Yeah, I don't know how you, with search engine optimization, there's always a thing about like understanding what the algorithm is and then playing the algorithm, et cetera, for search engines. And then the question is, okay, well, what's the optimization that you want to do when the summarization comes up, so that it summarizes that, you're one of the 2 or 3 that are mentioned, and actually in one of the cited links, right?
So I'm going to cover that.
Okay,
And
that's good.
Yeah,
good.
That's okay. Those are excellent questions. Absolutely, because that's really the whole thing here, right?
That's the heart of it. Yeah, for people.
Yes, right. So I put that at the end so I could keep moving. So Julio, this is your slide. So please, can you explain this the way you explained it to me?
Sure. So I thought it'd be useful to have a visual so we can discuss what the process is for when we use an LM to search the internet. And this is very, very similar to what people are calling RAG systems. So I think Alden's an expert at this, but it's kind of the same process, except that instead of searching over your own documents or the documents you put into the system, it's going to search over the internet. So what happens is the user puts in a query. Sometimes it's just a keyword. We're very used to doing keyword searches in Google. So sometimes it's just a keyword. Sometimes it's a very specific question with like secondary clauses and, ifs and stuff like that. And so the system takes that, and let's say it's always going to do an internet search. It might do some expansion on that query. It might rewrite that query to be better in some way that it thinks it needs to be better. It might do something like that. Then it's going to do one or more internet searches. And what it actually uses to search depends on I'm not going to say LLM because I'm going to be a little pedantic and say the LLM is kind of a model inside of another system. So it's not like GPT-4 that's doing this necessarily. It's ChatGPT or the search engine itself. It does one or more searches either with different queries or against different search engines. So OpenAI and ChatGPT will use Bing. Google's system will use the Google search engine. Perplexity can use a variety of engines. We don't know exactly what it's doing, but it might have its own data sources. It might have its own search engines. And there are other search engines out there that people can sign up to and do, like say, specialized queries. So if you have an agent that's doing this kind of querying for you, research for you, you might search some very specific search engines. Anyway, so those responses come back. And rather than showing you a page of links, what will happen now is that the LLM will go through and look at these links and then maybe filter them, like remove things or re-rank them. So just because you're number one in a typical search doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be the most relevant page to answer this particular question. So the system will re-rank them and try to pick out the pages that are most likely to answer the question. And then it'll take those that set. So it's a new ranking. And then basically, let's say, summarize those pages to answer the question. It'll write the answer for that. And then provide references as it's been told to do to whatever the sources were. And then it'll return that user to the answer. So it's like a multi-step process. And I just wanted to point this out. It's very similar to what RAG systems do. Again, but now we're searching the internet instead of searching some document collection that you created.
Thank you. All right. Can persistent user interaction with an LLM train it to favor certain viewpoints or content similar to a feedback loop? So I think, Julio, you were already talking about, what does training really mean? Do you want to dive in on that point?
Just that, I mean, it's hard to imagine. It's difficult to really think of like what the person who's asking this really means. I think maybe what they mean is that, like with Google, if you bounce from a page really quickly, it may not rank that page highly anymore. So you're kind of by actually viewing and examining and spending time on that page, Google thinks it's a good page, and so it'll give you a higher ranking. So maybe the person asking this question means something like that. I don't think that this is really feasible. At least we don't know of this happening in any of the LLMs out there, because they just give you an answer. They don't necessarily monitor your. I don't know that they monitor your going to that page necessarily. And then just because you like an answer or keep asking the same question doesn't mean that anybody else will see that. The system will learn what you want, but not necessarily what anybody else wants.
Yes, Julio, and I think that's what the point of this was. If you continually ask the same question, is that going to influence it for other people? And you're saying the answer is no. Alden, what are you saying?
Yeah, even I agree that the answer is no as an individual.
Right.
But as a group, I will be shocked if over the long term, the LLM cannot be influenced.
Okay.
OpenAI will use every piece of data in its power to make its engine better. And so, if thousands of people are saying or performing certain behavior, I would expect OpenAI to learn from that, right? And if you remember ChatGPT itself about a couple of months ago, they were like learning like crazy on all the behavior. The whole reason to make ChatGPT public was so that they could grab all the learnings from consumer behavior. So I would be really surprised if they are not already doing it, if they don't take group behavior. But I am pretty confident that you cannot sit there and do 1,000 sessions with ChatGPT and say, you know, uh, Alden is the best cricket player in the world. If I sit there and do that all day long, I don't think that will matter much.
Tim's got a question. Go ahead, Tim.
Hi. So I have a couple of questions. I would note, by the way, that, the game is far from over. In fact, I just talked to a colleague yesterday who I mentioned Perplexity to a couple of weeks ago. She's pretty much stopped using Google, pretty much uses Perplexity for everything. And I certainly switched a lot of my search there because anything that you want links in research for, it's much better. And one of the reasons, and this is my real question here, is the search engines at this point, let me be colorful, don't give a shit what you're searching for, okay? They want dwell time and ad response. That's all they want. And, you can read Cory Doctorow's stuff about this. So the game of SEO is a war. It's a classic, arms race, where what you're really trying to figure out is how is Google trying to monetize your attention, and how do you get to the top of that heap? And for now, the answer is Google wants to keep you on their site, take the information from your site, put it on their site, and not get you to their site. So, and this, of course, makes them vulnerable. This is why people start looking at other search engines, because it's not such a great experience anymore. But they have 96% of the market. So to me, the bigger question, and Julio's made some good points, and you have too, Alden, about, well, what's the new way I make money off people's attention given an LLM rather than a search engine? I don't know the answer to this question, but it's the one I'm really intrigued about, which is, okay, what does dwell time turn into? And is that, and if I think about customize everything because my robot knows me and starts to know my preferences better, how do they monetize that? I don't think they give a shit about getting me what I want. I think they want to turn that into money, and they'll do whatever they need to do to turn that into money. So I don't know, to me, that's what this is going to, the optimization is going to be figuring that out and staying one step ahead of it, because Google just changed their search metrics twice in the last couple of years too, and it radically changed search results. So that's the other problem, is when you get these choke points, whether it's Bing or OpenAI or Google, whoever it is, they control the world. So the other question is, how do you stay current if you're on top right now and then they change? How is that going to change in the world of LLMs? And maybe it's too early to answer, but to me, those are the big questions on my mind.
Hey, go ahead, Van. Thanks for raising your hand.
You're on mute.
Thank you. Now I'm unmuted. So my question is, when you do SEO, optimizing for Google, for example, Google Business Profile is one of the really important things that we work with, right? We try to optimize that, get all the information about the business on the Google Business Profile. And so I'm wondering, and maybe there's something similar for Bing, and you would, put all your information in there. Do the LLMs actually go out and look at those business profiles? Or do they just look at how the traffic is created and how things result when you do the search on Google or Bing?
So your question is, so Google is looking at the content the top content that comes, and that's on the first page. So they're going to put the best content on the first page. That's driven by things like inbound links, dwell time, bounce rate, and the quality of that content.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And so what does the Google Business Profile affect? Because I know that's one of the things that I've been told to focus on for a small business, for example.
So I work with enterprise, and we don't bother with that at all, actually.
I think location is one of them, Van.
Yeah.
Yeah. If the query profile is for a local business, then it's always good practice to optimize for GBP. And I don't think anything different needs to be done to optimize it for the LLM. If you're doing well in GBP, you will most likely do well if somebody asks a local question.
Yeah, and then a follow-up is, you mentioned Bing as being really important for the LLMs, and I didn't understand why. It's just
Yeah, because ChatGPT uses as its search tool, Bing. So when you ask a question like, what is the weather today in San Francisco? The LLM by itself doesn't have the knowledge of that. So under the hood, it will kick off a search to Bing and do the searching for you.
right. And so
Right?
do other LLMs like Claude, for example, might use something else besides Bing? So we'd have to know what the search.
So one of the things that we'll probably get into today is, what are the data sources that the top consumer engines are powered by, right? So for ChatGPT, Bing is a major source. They just signed a deal with uh, Fox, right? A news corporation. So that's going to become a major source. They signed a deal with Reddit. There's a really funny thing going on right now with stuff from Reddit coming into uh, LLM responses, right? All of those sources will become really interesting
Yeah.
as we move ahead.
Yeah. Well, I hope we get into that later today. That'd be great to explore that.
One question I had, Alden, Rosemary, and Julio. So my understanding is that personal law injury lawyers are one of the most competitive Google ad competitions out there. So if I had $10 million, I wanted to get ahead of that pecking order. It sounds like, Alden, one place I would do is be spending more money on Bing, so I pop up there. Is another one going off and just creating millions and millions of pages of internet content that trashes my competitors and praises me, and with the hopes I get sucked up in the future
Yes, but
data?
there is a name for this. It's called Reddit. And there is a really interesting example that is making the rounds. I wish I could share it right now, but I'll put it in the chat, where somebody asked, how do you get cheese to stick to pizza? And Google responded with use half a stick of glue to get your cheese to stick to the pizza. And when they look back as to where the source of that answer was, it was a comment that somebody had made on Reddit 11 years ago, which basically shows you how powerful Reddit is when it comes to influencing these generative responses.
But I'm going to go back to Paul's question about should he spend 10 million in Bing? Well, you're talking about paid, right? And that's not what we're talking about. I don't believe that paid in Bing will influence an LLM.
Yeah, no, that won't.
So, and
So,
the other issue
well,
of,
then maybe it's $10 million on web developers to make sure my law firm is showing up on top of a Bing query on the best law firms for personal injury in Boston.
well, I think what I would do is to make sure that your content appeared on a lot of other high-value websites. So it would be getting a big PR firm to really get that message out across all kinds of high-value brand, well-known brand websites.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Like a lot of like traditional SEO kind of techniques. I would also wonder if, and this is just a theory at this point, if what you could do is write content that specifically answers questions that people will want, not just keyword based stuff, because that needs to get pulled into that first set of search results. But then the LLM is going to re-rank them and try to answer the question. So if you write content that specifically answers questions, then I believe that they'll pass that filtering stage and then possibly be used in the answer that gets summarized at the end.
That's what I was wondering, Julio, if they're actually prioritizing some of the Reddit content because it's more Q&A based, or maybe the Quora content as well.
I think in that particular pizza example, that's probably what happened, is that they had a question, and I think it was a kid who wrote like a comedic kind of post about how to stick glue, how to stick cheese, and he even said he likes Elmer's glue, but make sure it's non-toxic or whatever. So he just wrote this comedic thing. The LLM just didn't know it was like satire, and then but it seemed to answer the question, so it used it to answer the question. So. But I think you can extend that to like real questions and real answers to real things that people want to know.
Yeah. And Paul, I just asked in ChatGPT who are the best personal injury law firms in Boston. It triggered off a search to Google or to Bing, and it used that results in the answer.
So that, yeah, I don't want to do it now, but I may tomorrow do that on all the search engines and all the large language models and see how different they are. Because
Correct.
at one level, we almost need to get the same query and benchmark it once a quarter to kind of see how it's changing.
But in an LLM, it won't matter because you could run that same query 100 times, and 100 times you're going to get a different response, right?
Totally different response. I mean, okay, maybe that's the thing is it can rank order the best personal injury laws in Boston and run it 100 times today and then 100 times next quarter.
So
Assuming, Julio, if the training set hasn't changed, it should be pretty similar as long as the temperature is not too.
Well, I guess that'd be an interesting thing to do and run
Yeah.
that same thing today and see what happens,
All right, we've got time for one more question before I go to recommendations and some data. Alden, do you want to kick off answering this?
Yeah, if it is used the tool, so in the case of search, or whether it's the News Corporation partnership or the Reddit partnership, it will cite the sources, right? If it is just doing its own probabilistic thing based on its training model, then it won't cite the sources. That's my feeling.
Julio?
Yeah, I mean, I read these questions kind of carefully, and I kind of wonder what's behind them. What influences the decision to cite sources? I think taken literally, it would be the system prompt that's given to it to do the search. Like it'll say, you will use this information to answer this question and make sure you cite the sources. So whatever information it uses, it will then be kind of compelled to cite those sources.
But I've done multiple, like 25, 30 prompts, the same prompt over a different period of time. asking the same question that should return a citation. I didn't ask for a citation. Sometimes it did return a citation, sometimes it didn't. So this question is really, why does it return sometimes and not others when it's the same query?
Because if it did not use the tool, it has no guarantee that the source was used. It is just running its probabilistic math. But if it used the tool, where the tool is the backend search that was done to Bing, then it can confidently say, okay, here's where I got the data from. That's the big difference. And I think ChatGPT is quite transparent about it. It will show you that it's triggering a search. You can do the drop down. You can see which URLs are being returned, things like that.
Well, one thing on that though, I love Perplexity. I've used it a lot, but I may even do my prompts wrong. But for the longest time, I'd want just tell me the recent AI news for pharmaceutical industry and only sort citations in the last 2 weeks. And it doesn't do that well yet.
Oh, okay.
I'm trying to do a search and limit I'm trying to actually narrow the citations that
Narrow
go
the
into, and I think it just goes and asks the question and just throws it back up there. And
But there's a follow-up box where you can then ask more specifically, but I'll have to do some tests of that, Paul. Because I've actually done that several times and had good luck, but
yeah, it's basically like an super uber Google alerts, but I want a real big ass
Right.
prompt for Google alerts that I'll show citations on any topic or industry or company I want, and I haven't yet got that.
okay. All right, so I know we only have a few minutes here, but this is some data that just came out recently about the correlation between SEO and LLMs. So in the first case, in Perplexity's case, more than half of Perplexity citations map to the top 10 organic results. There were 2 more studies that were done with SGE, and in one study, I think this was done with 1,000 keywords, 62% were not ranked in the top 10. In the second study, which was 2,900 keywords, 93% were not ranked in the top 10 for in organic results. So it's completely opposite. It doesn't look like right now, SGE, it matters that you've done well with SEO. That's what these tests are showing me right now. I haven't seen a lot of data like this, but I'm trying to gather as much as I can.
Or Google needs a new product manager for the SGE product.
That's true. Okay.
Rosemary, Joyce has her hand up.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead, Joyce.
Yes, hi, Joyce.
Hi, everyone. It's great to be here, and thank you for the presentation. It's such a timely topic, and especially on the back of Google I/O and all these conferences going on. Thank you for doing this. I just wanted to highlight one research paper from Harvard that I put in the chat early on. I can put the link later again. It basically is using strategic, they call it strategic text insertion, to add some certain way of saying things in a product description, and that immediately influence LLM outputs on product recommendation, especially when you ask a vague question around product selection. So they feel that's a one way to influence LLM, maybe a little bit easier than what's suggested by, I feel like it would be nice to be #1 ranked in Bing search result, but not everyone can do that. So that's a really interesting research paper with data to back it up. I don't know if actually LLMs will eventually pack up their vulnerabilities, let's say, and then make these sort of manipulation or gaming, the system tactics no longer work. I don't know if that's going to be the case. And lastly, just quickly on Perplexity, I know a lot of fans here. I find it now I always have to, in the follow-up questions, usually click on the sources box, expand the list of sources, uncheck some of the sources I feel like low quality and make sure that it doesn't include those sources in the result. I find I have to do it more and more. I don't know what's going on with their backend, but that really would improve the output quality and citation as well.
Thank you. And can you put that link, Joyce, in there so that we have it again? Because there's a lot of things going on.
Absolutely. I'll put it right away.
Perfect. Thank you. So this slide is really my recommendations that, and I've talked to Alden and Julio, that we think, and I've read from, you know, other SEO sites that I trust, that these are the kinds of things that you can do or should try to do to increase the likelihood that your content gets returned in an LLM. So this is the whole answer common questions with clear, succinct answers. Now that, of course, we have vision, it's using those different types of formats in your content, structured content. Also, I've been doing a test using FAQ schema on about 9 blog posts of mine. And for half of them, I'm doing better. For the other half, I'm not getting anything yet. I may have to go and change the questions that appear in the FAQ and see how they do that. The schemas, you don't see that on the page, but the search engines see that. And then, of course, optimize for featured snippets. That comes back to answering common questions in a clear and succinct way. And then, of course, there's a lot of technical SEO things that you need to be doing to keep your site ranking also. And also writing conversationally the way people speak, using action verbs. This actually came, Paul, from Microsoft at your conference last year. This was what Bing said. And also, this is more for using the AI to, you know, get better at writing topics, subtopics, and finding keywords. Also,
that's wonderful. We've got 6 minutes, so
yes.
Rosemary and Julio and Alden, fantastic presentation. Rosemary, this is so early, this space. We need to put a bookmark and revisit this 6 months, because I suspect it will be radically different in 6 months and certainly a year. But boy, the companies I talk with, I don't think most of them have any idea what's coming. And when we do simple things like taking their top product and putting in Google and putting the same query in 4 or 5 other LLMs, most executives I talk with, they have no idea that it's so radically different over there.
Well, I think in 6 months, we'll also see a lot more data coming out about, you know, how organic is against LLMs, right? And we'll see SGE rolled out, so.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, guys. Really good. Let's take the last few minutes and go to open mic. Open mic is where everyone can ask for, raise their hand and get the mic for 2 minutes and share something you're working on, or ask the community a question, or vent, or we can end early on a holiday, American holiday at least. Does anyone use Midjourney anymore? Why?
You too.
Habit.
Okay.
I still think Midjourney, others' creation is so much more fun to look at. I mean, in terms of creating my own, that's the same. I can use others, but I like the Midjourney sort of showcase and then sort of find the right interesting ones and copy their prompt. Of course, they would not generate the same, unfortunately, not the similar images, but still very good experience.
Well, thanks, Julie. Go ahead, William.
Yeah, I'll echo what Joyce said earlier. Thank you all for coming and sharing these topics. Really good questions, good conversation created here. And yeah, I'm all for revisit this. Maybe not 6 months, but 3 months. There's going to be a lot of change coming. One piece of information that I've come across in the last few weeks is the Generative Engine Optimization Framework paper. I'll share a link to this, but it actually has some additional advice for how to write content in a way to ensure that your content's being cited
and LLMs are included in that LLM. I have not done any testing with this material yet. I just wanted to add that to the pool here for others to consider.
Great. Thank you, William. All right. Who else has got something exciting? Who was blown away by something on the internet? I continue to find it correcting my grammar in a very interesting ways. And I'm finding myself now, I'll say, correct this grammar, but then explain the 3 or 4 different ways. So some of these really subtle nuances of which proposition you use, it's I've noticed has gotten very good at explaining the differences and rewriting it with different nuances. So precision of writing, it's been a useful tool for me. Go ahead, Lucinda. Then we'll go.
Yeah, so somebody, I think it was, what's his name, Hammond, I had mentioned a couple of weeks ago something called DSPy, and there's also something called Crew AI, which I had asked them about how did you compare it. But it'd be great if we could have somebody who has been using DSPy to kind of give a demonstration about how to do this. Because one of the things I've been hearing about is that people aren't using LLMs to like kind of do, you can use it for planning and things like that. But in terms of using it in a programmatic way is to use LLMs in a very narrowly defined manner, such that they are it's like almost like a function call in a way. So you use it really narrowly, it becomes more deterministic. And I think DSPy is one framework for doing that. And Crew AI is a framework for doing agents. And agents are not the sort of agents that you're thinking about in terms of accomplishing one task, but rather you can actually have a team of people and say, I want one of them to outline the my article. I want one of them to go to the internet and do research. I want another one to kind of summarize, and then just have them like work through in a collaborative group and say, do it until you finish it and it's good enough, and then show it to me. So I thought that's super cool, right? And that's kind of like allowing the LLMs to govern their own work like a collaborative team or like an agile team. So if anybody has done work like that, if you would be willing to give a presentation, I think it'd be super interesting to hear that.
Yeah, I'm sorry that someone else has there. David, I can't figure out where my hand is other than here. Sorry about that. But yes, I've been doing work with, I've been comparing Crew AI and AutoGen. And there's a library called Praisen AI. It's a PRAI. Teams, and you can switch between AutoGen and Crew.
Your sound went out for a bit.
Oh, you can, it gives you the ability, Praisen AI gives you the ability to switch between Crew AI and AutoGen. And I've been, playing with different teams. I'm really enjoying it. However, I'm also wondering, the information that I'm getting, I'm wondering how they're going to be used going forward, because there's some tasks that you can complete using just an LLM. You don't need an agent. But there's a lot of promising capability coming forward. So I can probably put something together and share it with everyone.
Raymond, that'd be great. Let's wrap this up. David, take us home. David.
I love the chatter about how to game the system, how to game the LLMs. It's just classic. How to get around it? How do we get around the rules?
Well, that's what's fun in life, right? Going speeding, but not getting caught.
Yeah. Good show, Paul. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone, and congratulations on the team for the 100th show tomorrow, and fantastic presentation tonight. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Paul.